Hello, I'm Edward Herman. You may have seen me in one of the many television commercials I've done for Dodge. Well, today, I'm here in a different role. I'm going to take you on a journey and tell you a story. The story of Dodge and Winston Cup stock car racing. It is a fascinating story about why a company that bowed out at the very top of the sport in the 1970s has decided to recapture its former glory. And it is the story of an unprecedented collaboration of corporate executives, engineers, car owners, mechanics, and race drivers, all working together as one team during a frenzied 500-day countdown to Daytona. Richard Petty, David Pearson, Bobby Allison, those were the names that filled the airwaves when stock car racers got together on Sunday afternoons in the 1970s. At one time or another, Petty, Pearson, and Allison all drove Dodges into victory lane. And Petty, the king of stock car racing, won 2 of his 7 championships at the wheel of a Dodge Charger. But as the 70s wound down, Dodge parked its cars and left NASCAR. Today, names like Earnhardt, Gordon, Jarrett, and Elliott are heard on Sunday afternoons. And starting with the 2001 Daytona 500, the name Dodge is back in the lineup. It's a long way from the corporate hallways here outside Detroit to Pit Road in Daytona. But for one Big Three automaker, Dodge, the journey back to NASCAR started right here. Jim Julo, a Dodge vice president, made it his personal quest to put the car maker back in stock car racing. Julo knew that NASCAR's popularity was skyrocketing and that his company had to get back in the game. But he also knew he couldn't just write a check. He needed a partner, and he knew that partner would have to be his dealers.
To win the marketing war, to win the marketing race, we can't do anything without the partnership of our 3,000 Dodge dealers.
Jim Julo came to us in our meeting and said, look, if we have an idea how we can go back to racing again, and this is the idea. Would you like to be a partner in this? Because that's how this thing will fly.
Jim Julo felt strongly that seeing is believing, so he wanted the 9-member dealer executive council to experience a NASCAR Winston Cup race. But Dodge was months away from announcing its return. So early in 1999, Julo dispatched one of his lieutenants to the Atlanta Motor Speedway to quietly rent this suite, number 107, for the March race. The council was whisked in and out with no one the wiser.
Well, it was an interesting day, first of all, because we had a lot of cynical dealers, and myself one of them. We weren't sure whether or not this was a great thing to do or not. We went in there on the secret and were told not to wear anything that said Dodge, and that day was incredible.
The ground rules were, if we don't walk out of this room with every hand in the air saying, yeah, let's go to the next step, we stop. And we got a unanimous endorsement.
On Thursday, October 14th, 1999, Julo summoned the media to New York City to make a momentous announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to welcome you all to the Waldorf Astoria Hotel.
It was now official. Dodge was getting back into Winston Cup racing. But there was more.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Ray Evernham.
It was also announced that Ray Evernham, one of the most successful crew chiefs in stock car racing, was leaving Hendrick Motorsports and driver Jeff Gordon. Evernham and Gordon won 47 races and 3 Winston Cup championships together. And now, Evernham had accepted the challenge of heading Dodge's one-team effort and fielding his own 2-car team.
And I decided that program, the Dodge program, was going to be the future, or a big part of the future of NASCAR Winston Cup, and I wanted to be part of it.
I got to tell you, the day we signed Ray Evernham up was an incredible high, because it was really the enabler that said, this program's a go.
With the announcement in New York, the 500-day countdown to Daytona was already 1 week old.
You know, I know it's going to be great for the sport, be a great competition. I wish them all luck. I just hope we outrun all of them.
Ray Evernham became one of the icons of modern stock car racing in the 1990s with the number 24 team. But in the 1960s and 70s, King Richard Petty was the man at the center of the stock car world. The man who many people credit with propelling stock car racing into the mainstream of professional sports. This is the King's office at Petty Enterprises, filled with the memorabilia collected during his amazing career, in which he won 200 races and 7 NASCAR championships, 2 of them in a Dodge. During one of those early, hectic days of the one-team effort, Petty sat behind this granite desk and presided over a momentous meeting. No press, no Dodge executives, just racers making a plan.
We sat down in that meeting and, believe it or not, we pretty much laid out the groundwork for the whole Dodge program.
At one point, Kurt Romberg rolled out a computer printout on which he and his father had created a timeline.
So we already had those two working together, trying to sort of figure out a timeline on when do we need to start the car, what we need to do, when the tests need to be run, when the wind tunnels need to be run. So they had a great big long piece of paper here that was laid out, and it was already laid out.
They reviewed the plan with Richard Petty's son, Kyle, and Ray Evernham.
For us, that was a huge meeting, to be able to work with Ray, to be able to put the program together.
We made a commitment that we were going to do this together and that we would continue that. And there's no way that we could have gotten everything done without that one team concept. There was just too much to do.
I think Dodge realized early on to come in and compete against Ford and against GM, they had to have a common front. So they had to do it all together.
On December 6, 1999, successful Pontiac team owner Bill Davis was flying home from Detroit in his private plane with an offer from Dodge to join its one-team effort. He called his wife Gail from the plane and asked her to see if Patty and Kyle Petty could join them for dinner.
I consider Kyle one of my best friends, certainly in racing, and we talk a lot of stuff back and forth, and I think I just wanted to bounce some ideas off of him.
I was excited to think that there was Bill 20 miles up the highway, that we were going to be working on the same project, because I think Bill's one of my best friends in racing.
We probably sat there for 2 or 3 hours and talked through it and why they were doing it and should we do it, and who had the most to lose and who did it make sense for and maybe didn't make sense for. And
at the time, Bill was 3rd or 4th in points. To change his focus from racing in the year 2000 to developing a Dodge for the year 2001 was a big switch for him.
Days after the decision was made to go back to NASCAR's Premier Series, things began to happen in every corner of this building, a sprawling technical center nestled in the rolling hills north of Detroit. This is a place where anything automotive can be created and analyzed in cyberspace. Engines are conceived and designed on computer workstations. Wind is visualized as colored waves of light swirling across a monitor. Scale model cars are put to the test in a multi-million-dollar wind tunnel. Without the millions of megabytes bouncing around inside this building, no one would have been able to even come close to meeting the 500-day deadline for designing, building, and testing a brand new race car.
We went from blank paper to a complete design in 6 weeks. We had prototype parts 6 weeks after that and running engines 3 weeks after that. At the Daytona 500 in February 2000, Dodge knew it had just 1 year left until its racing debut. They marked the occasion by finally confirming what everyone expected, that Petty Enterprises would field 3 cars in 2001, one of them piloted by John Andretti.
We've got a lot to look forward to. We've got Dodge, we've got a lot of things going on at Petty Enterprises. There's so many things that are working that are positive.
The plan was for John Andretti and Kyle Petty to be joined by Kyle's 19-year-old son, Adam, on the 3-car team. At the same time, it was announced that Bill Davis would switch his successful 2-car Pontiac operation to the one-team effort. Davis and his top people, including driver Ward Burton, had unanimously agreed to make the change.
Cautiously optimistic is the best way I could say it. It's a little bit scary because there's so many unknowns, there's so many variables that we have just not been able to test. A lot of them race conditions,
Dave Blaney, a former World of Outlaws champion, would once again be Ward Burton's teammate. With the Evernham, Petty, and Davis teams on board, the emphasis during the early months of 2000 was on using the technology being developed in Detroit to build race cars everyone could agree on.
There's a saying, to get race teams to work together is like herding cats. And we're very, very proud that we've been able to break that, and if anything, we got a different breed of cat.
Early in the one-team effort, the first cars were built in a nondescript metal building that had been erected for just that purpose at Petty Enterprises in rural Level Cross, North Carolina. Team members from Evernham Motorsports, Bill Davis Racing, and the Pettys all worked unselfishly to develop the first Dodge Intrepid race cars.
Once we get our initial program together, and we've got an engine that all 3 teams are satisfied with, a car that all three teams are satisfied with, then they'll present it to NASCAR.
1 year after the dealer executive council met secretly here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, Dodge was back, this time publicly. Ray Evernham met the media in this room and told them that one of his drivers would be Bill Elliott.
Ray came to me and asked me would I do it, and I think once the reality set in, I got myself up off the floor. I said, yeah, this is a great opportunity.
Elliott, who grew up in the Smoky Mountain foothills of North Georgia, is a Winston Cup veteran and as good a driver as you'll find anywhere. He won 11 races in 1985 and became known as Awesome Bill. He also captured the Winston Cup Championship in 1988 and has been voted most popular driver a record 15 times.
Everybody has been 100% behind me. The Ford fans wish me well. The fans that are my fans are ready to go with the Dodge deal.
He's a great, great veteran, and Bill Elliott has wins and championships left in him.
And there was one additional surprise. Evernham and Dodge had arranged to put Elliott back in the number 9 car, the number he had used during his winningest seasons.
It's going to be a great year. I think the fans are going to get a real blast out of seeing Bill Elliott win another race.
This is the wind tunnel where Dodge first tested its Winston Cup car just before Christmas, 1999. Less than 5 months later, on May 2nd, 2000, hearts beat a little faster here, more than a few fingers were crossed, and all eyes turned to the south.
It was a typical sunny South Florida spring day when Ray Evernham's test team rolled its creation out of the garage at Homestead Miami Speedway for its first on-track test. This was no ordinary test. It would be conducted under the watchful, critical, analytical eye of the media. Ray Evernham, Kyle Petty, and Bill Davis were on hand for the occasion, and they all looked more like expectant fathers than racers. But in the end, all the late nights and early mornings, all the missed holidays and lost weekends, all the skipped dinners and gobbled lunches paid off. Dodge was back.
When they rolled the car out of the truck, I'm saying, okay, this is where Petty Enterprises is going to be in 20 years.
Okay, it ain't a new car anymore. It's got miles on it. We're selling it to you.
But it was a lot of fun. It was a day in history, first day in 16 or 17 years that a Dodge was back on the racetrack.
For that kind of a cross-section of the media to come to Homestead, Florida, and to witness a test, to me, was just amazing.
The month of May 2000 was a busy one. The first test of the Intrepid RT was a success. And at the end of the month here at Lowe's Motor Speedway in Charlotte, Dodge would make another major announcement. Things were going exactly as planned, and then disaster struck.
The youngest driver in the first family of NASCAR racing was killed today.
On May 12th, just 10 days after Kyle Petty drove the first new Dodge at Homestead, his son Adam was killed in a racing accident.
No one ever met Adam Petty, I don't think, that didn't just love him. He was such a neat kid and had such a wonderful, warm, genuine personality and such a great future as a racer.
I would like to be able to turn back the hands of time and start all over again. That's not going to happen, but I think just being a part of this close-knit family was good at this point in time, good for all of us, and it helped us through all of it.
2 weeks later, Ray Evernham stood in Victory Lane at Charlotte and asked the gathered media to observe a moment of silence for a fallen teammate. Then, Evernham cleared his throat and announced the signing of 19-year-old Casey Atwood to join Bill Elliott on the two-car Evernham Motorsports team.
I wanted two drivers who were complete opposites. I didn't want any conflict inside the team, so I've got a veteran and I've got a youngster.
With a new car and everything and new people, younger people, it's going to take maybe a year, but I think in the future we're going to be hard to deal with, and we're going to win some races and hopefully in the future win some championships.
Later, Petty Enterprises announced that Buckshot Jones, an up-and-coming Busch Series driver, would pilot its third car in 2001. 2 weeks after the Charlotte race at Michigan International Speedway, it was announced that Melling Racing would switch its one-car operation to Dodge in 2001, with driver Stacy Compton at the wheel.
we're a single car operation, but being involved with Dodge, I think is going to make us a multi-car team once again. If we're struggling, hopefully we can go to Ray and say, what do you guys got under your car? Or we can go to Bill Davis, or we can go to the Petties or whoever.
By mid-July 2000, most of the Dodge teams were already on board, so the focus was squarely on the one-team effort. Never was that more apparent than when the Evernham and Petty teams traveled to Kentucky Speedway, a state-of-the-art mile-and-a-half superspeedway near Cincinnati. The object of this test was not pure speed and horsepower, but development of the intrepid body and chassis combination. Ray Evernham, an acknowledged master of this black art, presided over the operation, while the Detroit Brain Trust and crews from both teams mingled in the garages. They huddled around computers, assessed the data, and swapped ideas. And at the center of it all was Bill Elliott, the veteran driver who could tell Evernham how the car handled, and share advice with Casey Atwood and Stacy Compton. This was the one-team concept in action.
By this point in the one-team effort, no matter where they went, the man in the spotlight was Ray Evernham. And Evernham knew that the organization he was building represented the biggest challenge of his career.
I've got a ways to go as a car owner. I had to work real hard in this business to become a good crew chief, and I can see that I'm going to have to work equally as hard to become a car owner, because a car owner's responsibilities are different.
With the one-team effort beginning to build momentum, executives here in Michigan decided once again to be different. So they threw a wild card into the mix, a wild card named Chip Ganassi.
Ganassi is a former open-wheel racer who found his real niche after he left the driver's seat. As an owner, his drivers won 4 straight kart championships from 1996 through 1999. And in May 2000, his team won the world-famous Indianapolis 500. Chip Ganassi was at the absolute pinnacle of his game. But Ganassi was also ready for something different. And when Winston Cup owner Felix Sabates offered to sell Ganassi majority ownership of his 2-car team, Chip said yes. And when another offer came to campaign Intrepids in 2001, he said yes again.
All I want to do is gain the respect of the competitors around the paddock and, go out on the weekends and put on a show that we can be proud of.
Ganassi inherited a veteran driver in Sterling Marlin, a master of superspeedway racing who won back-to-back Daytona 500s in 1994 and 95.
Well, Chip, he's been racing a long time. He's used to drive race cars. He's a racer, and that's all I've ever done. My dad raced, and he's got the desire to want to win. I got the desire to want to win, and I think we'll have the tools to do it with.
Later, Ganassi announced that his second driver would be rookie Jason Leffler, a 24-year-old former sprint car racer.
With Ganassi on board, there were now 10 cars on deck for Daytona. This is Lowe's Motor Speedway outside Charlotte, North Carolina, the very center of American stock car racing. On November 14th and 15th, 2000, as the countdown clock dipped below 100 days until the Daytona 500, all 5 Dodge teams and most of the drivers were here to test. Their Winston Cup engine had been approved by NASCAR just a couple of weeks earlier, so this would be the first test of the engine and chassis on one of the circuit's premier racetracks. As with any new effort, enthusiasm was running high.
You hate to wish time away, but I wish next year was here already.
The goal was to work on aerodynamics, chassis setup, and engine endurance. And the plan was to run all day and into the night.
It's just very exciting, the new car coming in, and everybody's really pumped up about it. With all our information combined, I think we're going to be real hard to deal with.
At first, each car and driver followed a rhythm, turning several fast laps and then coming back in for adjustments and a new setup.
You don't know just how excited, I am. I can't wait for next season to get started.
As the sun set and the temperatures cooled, the cars turned more and more laps, putting many miles on the new engines. And at the end of the first day, one thing was clear. The race package was a success.
When you get the manufacturer involved in your race team, the effort goes, it multiplies.
Lap times were impressive, with Sterling Marlin running times equal to what he had turned in a Chevrolet during qualifying at Charlotte just 5 weeks earlier.
This time next year, I hope we're going to be sitting, somewhere in the top 5 in points and got us 2 or 3 wins, and I don't think it's totally out of the question. I think we can do it.
Everybody involved in the one-team effort was excited, and the drivers were already looking forward to racing and beating their new teammates.
You got to have a racer's mentality here. They're just another guy you want to beat on Sunday, so it'll be a tricky thing. It'll be like brothers racing each other. You'll help to a certain point, but you still want to be the guy up front.
As the second day of testing began, everything was heading in the right direction. The lap times were good. Some engines had logged more than 500 miles, and all the computer data was positive. The information that had been gathered would help the teams further refine their setups. The drivers, crew chiefs, and engineers knew they were on the right track.
I know that when we get to Daytona, there's going to be a lot of people talking about Dodge. And after about 2 or 3 days of it, I'll probably be sick of it.
As the 5 teams continued to build new race cars, executives in Michigan began a major push to use Winston Cup racing to help market and sell street cars. Dodge wanted to raise buyers' awareness and to revolutionize manufacturer marketing. It wanted, once again, to be different.
We are going about it in a very non-traditional way. We are engaging all of the different sponsors of all the race teams and working with them as partners, again under this one-team approach.
It became the first car maker to directly sponsor Winston Cup cars when it decided to back Ray Evernham's 2-car team. The company and its dealers would sponsor the cars, and it would be their logos the fans would see. Dodge also created joint promotions with other team sponsors. For instance, a deal was reached with General Mills to place die-cast replicas of Dodge Intrepid RT race cars in 16 million Cheerios, Wheaties, and Golden Graham cereal boxes. Mountain Dew agreed to sponsor Casey Atwood's pit crew, dubbing them the Dew Crew. Even mighty Microsoft got into the mix, creating an MSN network race game featuring the Dodge Intrepid. And Dodge's own website offered race fans a chance to be part of the team at a place called Dodge Garage. And by the time Speed Weeks 2001 began in Daytona Beach, Dodge had painted the town red. The huge marketing blitz that accompanied the automaker's return to Winston Cup racing was designed to put its image firmly in the public's consciousness. What began many months ago in Detroit finally came to an end at Daytona International Speedway, about 450 miles south of here, with the beginning of Speed Weeks 2001. With that beginning, it was evident that NASCAR would never be the same again. Dodge had made things different and had brought a whole new approach to the sport of stock car racing. It took 5 race teams and made them one. It hired a head coach, Ray Evernham, to lead that team. And it built a brand new race car from the ground up. On February 10th, Daytona 500 pole day, Dodge faced NASCAR's best for the first time. 51 drivers made qualifying attempts, and when it was over, even the Dodge teams were stunned. Bill Elliott was on the pole for the 2001 Daytona 500, and right next to him was Stacy Compton. The one-team effort had captured the front row. Would Dodge win the Daytona 500? No one knew, but one thing was clear: Dodge was back. Finally, the countdown was over. It was time to go racing. Thanks for coming along with me on this Dodge journey. Now keep watching. You'll see exclusive interviews with some of the people who have made the one-team concept a reality. For Dodge, I'm Ed Herman, and I'll see you at the races.
You know, a lot of people in this business can make a lot of promises, but Dodge has delivered on those promises. They're backing up. They're just not throwing money at the sport. They're backing it up with technology, and I think that now that's what you need. There is a lot of money in this sport, and the one thing that you can't put a price on is the availability and the commitment of the access to that technology, and they've made that commitment. And everybody that worked on the program should feel the same way, from all the people at Dodge Engineering, Petty Enterprises, Davis, Ganassi, everybody that's been involved in this program. If a Dodge goes to Victory Lane in the Daytona 500, or any time a Dodge goes to Victory Lane this year, everybody that's worked on this program should feel part of it. Well, the sport constantly changing. It's growing and growing and growing, and it has earned its right as a professional sport. I guess now we were the 5th largest and kind of bumped hockey out of the way, and we're right on the heels of the NBA, and the sport keeps changing and changing. And I think that Dodge coming back, and the way Dodge has approached their comeback to NASCAR and Winston Cup, again, gets us closer to maybe being part of the big 3.
But I do feel like that Dodge has done a very good job of getting the knowledge there and to all the teams, and being able to nurture and help the ones that have lacking a little bit here, a little bit there, because in order to get this program off the ground, that's what's going to have to happen. Then on Sunday afternoon, then the teams are going to have to, it'll eventually, break off, and there'll be more of a individual type deal. But still, as far as the whole layer and level of things are coming together, it's going to have to be a team effort. And even on down the road, it's going to have to be a team effort to some extent. But I still feel like that then once everything gets going, everybody gets in their mode and gets in their competitive nature week in, week out, that a little bit that'll split away, but still the common knowledge will be there, and being able to go and discuss different things with the different teams will be able to help me and the other Dodge deals. It was a tough emotional decision. I mean, because my dad wasn't here to bounce idea off of him, and I struggled with it a lot. But I'll never forget we went to a Ford Fan Appreciation Day that they have, and I thought, well, I'll be stoned or crushed or whatever out here in the middle of everybody. But I'll tell you, I've had no negative comments, absolutely none. Everybody has been 100% behind me. The Ford fans wish me well. The fans that are my fans are ready to go with the Dodge deal. So, and I'll tell you, after that, I came out there with a whole different outlook on things, because it really helped me say, okay, I made the right decision, and I can go on and let this go and say, okay, now I'm with Dodge, let's do that, meet new friends, meet new fans, and go on down the road.
Ray's just helped me out a lot, because he's just got so much experience, and he's experienced that at teaching younger drivers. That's what he done with Jeff. They both started out. Jeff hadn't really ever drove a car like this, and he helped him to progress to what he's done now. And he's real patient with younger rookies that really don't know a lot. And he's so experienced. It's not good to have a rookie driver and somebody that really don't know a lot about cars working on it too. So. To have somebody that knows as much as him and then has as good a record as him obviously helps me out a lot. Bill just brings a lot of experience to the table. He's a past champion, and he's been to all the tracks a lot where I haven't really been to all the tracks a lot of times. So he's got a lot of experience behind him, and he's going to be able to help me out. As far as the cars and how to drive a Winston Cup race car, and as far as all the tracks. But
I think it's special, obviously. My grandfather, all through the 50s, run Chrysler products. Then when my father started in the late 50s, all through the 60s and 70s, I think those decades pretty much speak for themselves as what Petty Enterprises and Dodge and Plymouth and Chrysler together accomplished. And then in the late 70s, obviously, we went our separate ways. The last time we came to Daytona with a Dodge was when I came with the ARCA car in '79. We were fortunate enough to win a race then. But I think for us as a group, it was big. It was big to be considered. It was big to be a part of it. I think that was one of our long-term goals was to be a part of the Dodge program when they came back. That's why we got into the truck series with Dodge to begin with. So, I think we laid some groundwork and they laid some groundwork, and it all came together at the same time. I think for NASCAR to have Dodge back is huge. The main reason being at a time when NASCAR's growth and potential for growth is staggering. And so many Fortune 500 companies are in it, and you look around and you look at everybody that wants to be in NASCAR. To have a manufacturer sitting on the sideline didn't bode well for it. So to have that manufacturer step up and say, hey, we want back in the game, we want to be a part of it, along with GM and along with Ford, then I think that speaks volumes for where the sports is, where it's come, and where it can be. And I think Dodge will change the face of the sport. I really do. I said this when we made the announcement last year. I think GM will take a different look at the sport. Ford will take a different look at the sport, because as Dodge comes in, now you've got that third player in there. It's that wild card you don't know. It's always been, for the last 20 years, it's been, okay, Ford moves, GM moves. Ford moves, GM moves. Now you've got that third player in there, and you've got to keep an eye out on him too.
I think the idea of bringing teams together, and they have basically three that have been brought in to develop from the ground up this Dodge Intrepid, because it's not only the body, it's the engine, it's everything, and that's a big undertaking in a very short period of time by racing standards. So I think that they've all done an excellent job. They've worked really well together. I think everybody's contributed equally. and I think that it's been very, very productive, and it continues on even now, but less so obviously as we're getting closer and closer to that date when we not only have to beat the other cars, but we have to beat the other Dodges too.
With the background, the history that the Petties have in racing, I don't think you could ask for a better opportunity. Not just because of who they are and what they've done in racing, but because of the type of people they are. They're really close-knit family, and that's something that's always been important in my life is my family. I've always thought is my team is my family. So I think I got the best of both worlds.
I think it's exciting for the fan. I really do. I hear everywhere I go that I've been a Mopar fan all my life, or that it's going to be neat to have another make to pull for. I got some friends that just have bought Dodge dealerships. It's an exciting time. I think it's going to add a new element. It's definitely going to be a lot written about it. It's going to be a lot said about it. It's going to be a lot of interviews about it. And I don't think it's going to do anything but help with NASCAR's popularity, and as well as help with Dodge selling vehicles on Mondays.
Well, having Dodge support with I think that was part of Bill Davis's decision is being one of the first teams in there, being on the ground floor, and you go out there and you get the job done. We feel like we're going to have some support for a while. I've got them involved in my sprint car team. We use the Mopars in our sprint car engines, and those things are going great. So, hey, we just go out there and get the job done. It's good for us. It's good for Dodge.
It means a whole lot. I mean, I've been around racing a long time, and I remember coming from my dad, like here to Charlotte Motor Speedway, and at the time it was all Dodges and Plymouths and Fords, and Dad had a Chevrolet and Friday Hassler, and I always remember the Dodges. I was a big fan of Bobby Isaac, the orange K&K insurance car, the number 71, and I always thought it was really neat looking. So, Dodge get back in, I think it's going to be real neat for us. It's going to be a big challenge, and we're looking forward to it.
I have a lot to learn this year, this being my rookie year, and just going to try to get as much experience as I can. And obviously we have a lot to develop between the cars and obviously my experience. So it's going to be a long year, but I'm excited to get going. I can't put my finger on one thing. There's hundreds of things I'm going to have to do, but main thing I think is just get experience and seat time, and then not make too many mistakes, and the mistakes that you make, learn from them, and eventually you'll be up front. I think you try to give 110%. I think it's great, especially with the way Sterling is. He's real easygoing and real nice, and for a young driver to come into a team and have someone like Sterling Marlin, it's a little intimidating with all his years of experience, but he makes you feel welcome, and he's going to be a great help, and I'm going to, reap the benefits of having a two-time Daytona 500 winner as my teammate.
I tell you, I go out and sign autographs out at our souvenir trailer just about every week, and I've never, ever imagined there's that many Dodge fans out there. You just see people coming through with Dodge hats, and whether they're in our line to sign or not, they'll come by and, their thumbs up and, glad to see you guys back in Dodge next year. And there's a lot of Dodge fans out there. The sport needs it. The sport needs, Dodge back in it. They need, for the manufacturers, I think it's going to be good for the sport. It's a ton of Dodge fans out there, and I think they're probably the most loyal fans there is. When we were in the Truck Series, we've seen a lot of fans come out of the woodworks, and now that the Cup Series is going to see Dodge, it's going to be pretty important. I think it's going to be important to the fans, and it's going to be awfully important to the manufacturer as well.
Everybody on the last year and a half has asked, where did the Ray Evernham idea come from? And I must tell you that as Lou Patain and I sat and talked about this program in its very infancy, we said to make this work and to make the dealer partnership work, which is an important component of this program, we have to have somebody that's credible be our development partner. And there aren't a lot of names that spring to mind when you do that. And frankly, as an example, early on with the dealers, we were throwing out names like Jeff Gordon, Ray Evernham. If we could get something like that going for us, would that be acceptable? Never really knowing we had a chance at that point, just using them as an example. And I don't know whether it was fate or kismet or the fact that if you say it long enough it becomes true, but later that year, particularly in the summer, there was some interest. Ray would like to become a team owner. What do we think? Can we put a deal together? And as luck would have it, it all worked out. And frankly, it was critical to the program. And he has been just a wonderful development partner since the day he came on board. The approval process and the agreement we had to reach to get this program done was time-consuming but not difficult. Like I say, when you grow an idea out of the brand definition, our internal buy-offs were very simple, very straightforward, without melodrama. It was very easy to build a consensus why it was the right thing to do. And when we went to the dealers, while it was time-consuming, because there's a lot of people to get bought into it, it was relatively unanimous at each stage of the game. With a small group that we brought in at the very beginning to Atlanta, the ground rules were, if we don't walk out of this room with every hand in the air saying, yeah, let's go to the next step, we stop. And we got a unanimous endorsement. We went on to the next group of presidents and sat in a garage area, I won't tell you whose, at MIS in Michigan. And the same kind of thing. We're going to sit here today, we're going to talk about it, and at the end of this thing, we're either going to all raise our hands up and say this is something we're going to do, or it dies right here in this room. And we got a unanimous buy-in. And I won't go so far as to say we convinced 3,000 dealers to all say yes to this. I will tell you that when it went out to the boards of the DAAs and there, we got very, very strong majorities, if not unanimous votes in the board levels, because they could see the value of the program. I mean, they saw the vision that we had for this and were able to see how it would work at their local level. And I think that's the power. We are as a dealer group and as a factory completely invested in this as a centerpiece of the Dodge marketing efforts for the next many years.
I think that Winston Cup is maybe the final arrival point for Dodge as a brand. I think that it puts us into the mainstream of America again. I think that America was missing us in Winston Cup, and it really does a lot for us, not only from a presence standpoint, but from an image standpoint. We are all about, the middle of America and selling our cars and trucks to them, and I think that really adds a lot for it. There's an awful lot of people that remember us for the great vehicles like the Dodge Daytona with the Hemi engine that broke the 200-mile-an-hour speed barrier for Winston Cup, first time ever. It's that kind of different thinking that we want to employ in what we're doing now, and hopefully we'll come up with some other new innovations. And we have to kind of introduce ourselves to a new generation of Winston Cup fans. We know that there's an awful lot of Winston Cup fans that remember us and want us to come back, and so we hope to get a win-win out of that. The one-team approach is something that we're employing for the race teams, and it's new to Winston Cup. It's not new to us. We've been doing one team for a long, long time. We do it in everything that we do. All of my team, from the advertising agencies to the people that work for me to the people that manufacture the cars, they are all very, very passionate about Dodge as a brand. And unlike some others, we don't have a race group that only works on racing.
Well, let's be honest. The reason why NASCAR Winston Cup racing is so appealing is its marketability. I mean, the numbers are huge. $1.2 billion worth of merchandising. Over 200 million fans watch every year on television. Over 6 million fans attend the races. So the marketing opportunity is huge. But engineering there's a real return possible from Winston Cup racing and engineering. And a lot of people laugh when I say that. And they get confused between the two forms of racing. There's high-tech racing, which Formula One and IndyCar is an example, and they have all these high-tech widgets. But there's a lot of technology in NASCAR Winston Cup. It's very subtle. It's not glamorous technology, but it's the kind of technology that we use very often in the design of our production cars. Things like strength of material and reducing weight and being able to make things that are difficult. Those are the kind of technologies that are really exhibited strongly in NASCAR Winston Cup, and we're getting a good return back to production in regards to those. We will absolutely feel like a winner when we line up for the Daytona 500 in 2001. To be able to pull this program off in 500 days is really something very, very special. Remember, before we started, we had no engine, we had no vehicle, and a lot of people would say there's no way you can come up with a car and an engine that quick, and we have done that, and we are right on schedule, and we expect to be at Daytona, and we expect to be competitive.
Well, when we signed up for this job, everybody pointed out to us that we weren't signing up for a job, we were signing up for a lifestyle. And it's just, that's exactly what it is. When I went to Ray Evernham's engine shop the first time, it was an empty building and there were carpenters working. And it was 9 o'clock at night, the carpenters are still there putting up the petitions in the engine shop for all the different rooms in there. And I came back to engineering and we had a meeting with the cylinder block supplier. And one of the things we did in the prototyping is we made little teams. We brought in the designers, the pattern makers, the foundry, and the machine shop all in the one room, and we all sat down and figured out the timeline. And we pointed out to them that there were carpenters working till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and we'd better, because there's no reason that the carpenters should be working harder in this program than we were. And everybody's just done what it takes. It's not an 8-hour job. You know, last week I was 8 o'clock at night, I was on my cell phone, my pager was going off, and my wife's handed me our home phone saying there's somebody here for you. You know, so that's just kind of a normal day.
I think from the NASCAR standpoint that if you've got all the manufacturers involved, you've got everybody. You know, right now you got the GM and the Ford, and so you got GM and Ford fans. There's a lot of Chrysler product fans out there. And even though they might go to the races, they don't get as enthusiastic and get with the show quite as much. But with Dodge coming back, then you got the big three all racing head-to-head every Sunday or Saturday, whatever it is. And I think that's going to just create new fans and new excitement. We've got a couple of new tracks coming on board next year. So all of that stuff, plus, you know, we've got the new TV contracts and stuff. So Dodge couldn't have picked a better time to have come back in Winston Cup racing. Basically, probably the best car that I ever had as far as just being an all-out good race car on a dirt track, short track, road course, super speedway was a 72, 3, and 4 Dodge. It was the most sensitive car. It was a good aerodynamic car. It was a good handling car. Of course, we ran it in 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, and 77. So we got a lot of experience with that one body style. So we had it down pretty pat. So we won, four championships and a bunch of races in there. So it was just the most versatile car that I've ever driven. And I've driven all other kinds of cars, and they might be good on short track, might be good on super speedway or intermediate track, but this car was as good as you could get anywhere you go. Well, I don't know if I have or not, okay. But you got to figure that when I first started racing in 1958, I guess, first race that I ran, there probably was, 4,000 people in the grandstand. So I had time to talk to all of them. I mean, or any of them that come down and talk to you. And probably the first race, I might have signed 1 or 2 autographs. Then the second race, you might have signed 4 or 5. The next race, and then the first thing you know, you signed hundreds of autographs. But I grew up with the sport, and I knew where I came from. I knew where the sport came from. And as it got bigger, I just sort of said, this is growing. And I never realized really what it was till probably after I retired, and I sit back and then I look at everything and I say, man, this is big. But what you did, you sort of just grew along with it. And if I'd have been racing a Saturday night deal and all of a sudden, say right now, and you've been playing in front of 1,500, 2,000 people, and all of a sudden you go to Winston Cup and they throw you in front of 200,000 people, how do you act? I don't know. I don't know if I could handle that or not. I mean, that'd be a culture shock. Well, I never had the culture shock. So I grew up as a country boy, and racing was country, and I just sort of went along with the show, and I'm still doing the same thing. I mean, I've tried not to change, even though I have changed. I mean, just change with age. But I tried to change with the times without trying to get ahead of the times.
This has been a production of Freewheelin' Films, Aspen, Colorado.